Yeah, she was quite a find for the HRA,
Oh, I
because
guess.
I was on the
Ready,
board
boys
then,
and girls?
was the president.
Give Lori about a 30-second here, so.
They'll have some tough time to fill those shoes.
There. Get my Kirkland stuff out of your way.
Oh,
Hold on, just giving you some ambient beats, ladies and gentlemen.
ah,
Beautiful. I feel like
There you
dancing.
go.
Smooth music there.
Little Yaz flute.
If we could get some fanfare next time. Is she gonna let us know, Kim? We need to
You
wait
can
for
go.
her. All right. Let's call to order the special Brainerd Parks Park Board meeting at 4 o'clock on January 7th, 2020 at the Crow Wing County Courthouse. Third floor.
Yeah.
I cover it all, Kim? Okay.
good job, Troy.
So we are here to discuss youth baseball. And Tony and I met with a representative from Community Ed, and I guess two representatives. I guess Joe Pokamp would be considered a representative of Community Ed as well. A couple weeks ago, the plan was for Darrell Olson, the Baxter mayor, to also attend, and perhaps one other, but for some reason they weren't able to, so we thought we would, this will probably be more informational and kind of brainstorming and just kind of let you know what kind of came from that. Tony sent some information out. And so I don't know that we'll be voting on anything today other than just having some conversation and talking about what transpired at the last meeting and what kind of we're looking at moving forward. I think the biggest thing with this, and we have a couple representatives from Blaba that wanted to come and listen in as well, but I think in the last couple of meetings, we kind of talked about, you know, the goal to be bringing the youth baseball together for the community. And unfortunately, there's a lot of fingers and tied into that and strings, and because things have been done one way for so long, it's probably not going to be the easiest thing to accomplish. But we're hoping that, at least I'm hoping that we can look at, you know, the goal, the main goal of bringing community, the youth baseball together as a community and what that means for the kids of the community, what that means for the program, for this community. And when I say community, I mean Brainerd, Baxter, Nisswa, outlying areas. So if you'd like, Tony, I could turn this over to you and you can kind of, or we can start with the process to amend, or we can start with the Brainerd baseball expenses, whatever you want to do there.
Well, can I ask a question before
Yeah.
we go? I guess I would like to know where the school district stands and where the city of Baxter stands, because, you know, the school district doesn't pay Baxter anything apparently.
Yeah.
And so they've got to buy in there somewhere.
Yes.
And so for us to look at doing something different, we need to know where they stand.
Yes,
And
great point, Dale, because we just, Tony,
otherwise, we're just gonna be beating our heads against the wall and not getting anywhere.
I agree. And Tony and I just met yesterday to kind of summarize some of the stuff that we had discussed with them. And that was my point to Tony. It was, I really felt like there were some key personnel that weren't at the meeting that we had out in Baxter a couple weeks ago. And for the same reason, I feel like we need to have the school district a representative, because when you look at this, the joint powers agreement, they're part of that.
Right. I mean, for example, if the school district says, we're not gonna do anything different, and the city of Baxter says, we're not gonna put any money in it, we're not doing it, then.
Yes.
Then there's no reason for us to spend our time trying to pull everything together. We need to back up and say, what are we gonna do moving forward with just our program?
Yes.
Well, I think one thing we want to do that Troy and I discussed yesterday was we need a representative from the city, from the park board, from community ed, from the city of Baxter, and from the school board.
Yeah.
And that way we can sit down and discuss even if this is feasible or something they, either party or us, this as a party, would want to do. Because there's some financial considerations here,
Definitely.
you know, so.
And there might even be some turf issues, no pun intended, but, you know, some may just decide that, you know, let alone the monetary piece, that what's working for them is working for all, and it's not.
Right.
Yeah, and, you know, I think the other part of that is, I brought this up before, is we are an anomaly in how these things are run in most communities. And because of that, and because of things, the way things have been done for so long, we need everyone's buy-in, and maybe there's some education, maybe there's some sales that, so to speak, that need to be brought forth and, in making this happen. And I guess the other part of it, we kind of feel like we're under the gun, but maybe we got to make sure this is done right and that everyone is buying in and on the same page. So maybe the timing is less important than making sure it happens. To me, I think the timing's pretty important, but I think it's more important that it's done right and that it's done for, first of all, for the right reason, and it's done right so that it benefits the whole community. So, but I totally agree, Dale. I feel like there's people missing from this that need to be involved as well.
Yeah, looking at all of these, just a glance over what I've seen, Baxter has nothing really to gain that I can see, other than making it more of a community team than it would be to, because they don't have to, they're not paying for things.
The city.
Right.
The city of Baxter, yeah. And, well, they are paying for things because they're paying community ed, but
Correct.
it's still, it's set up different, completely different than how things are run with the Brainerd program.
One reason I put in the Brainerd baseball expenses with field maintenance, paint, agri-lime, things like that, is because currently, community ed runs the Baxter programs, and they have their revenues and expenditures. However, they do not pay the city of Baxter for field preparation. And that's one thing that, say this does happen, with the additional teams being added, they would need to use our fields, in my opinion. And therefore, there's some costs incurred there. And that's something we would have to look at. And that is something, I talked to the Baxter maintenance foreman today, and he said that's something they may be looking into is should community ed or whomever pay for the field upkeep, the personnel and things like that. And, you know, there's, you know, if it's getting game ready, that's at least an hour per field. There's the chalk, there's, you know, diamond dry if it's wet, things like that, that would be something that, if this would happen, is the city of Brainerd going to go, oh, we'll just do your fields and we have no revenue? You know, so, I mean, that's something that needs to be discussed. I did leave a message with the Baxter City Administrator today, and he did not return my call, but hopefully he'll get back to me on that. But I think what we're kind of looking at a little bit today is, does the park board want us to move forward with, I try to set up a meeting with all the entities, the school, the community ed, the city of Baxter, and ourselves, and then sit down and be able to talk. And because you have to have all the players at the table. Otherwise, you're just whistling Dixie, basically. You know, so is that something the park board would want me to do, just exploratory type of a meeting?
Do you know if community ed makes money off from their program, or do they just break even?
Any expense above and beyond their revenue, the city of Baxter writes them a check every year. Last year, I believe it was $35,000.
How much?
35,000. That the city of Baxter wrote a check to community ed.
That's not counting the revenue that they take in for the programs. I want to say Corey said they come out around $7,000 in the good at the end of the day.
Yeah,
But that's
believe you're right on
including
that.
that's including all their programs.
But the city of Baxter isn't including in that 35,000 then the maintenance of the fields and things like that as far as Baxter costs.
the city of Baxter eats that. They pay for that.
Yeah,
Plus their field maintenance.
yeah.
So they do field maintenance, plus they pay community ed. And it's varied per year. It's kind of gradually went up. Go ahead.
That is the one thing that is interesting about their model is currently we pretty much break even. We made a small profit off of our baseball league last year. We only have 90 kids, but we made a profit off it when you factor in all of the costs, including the field upkeep. But the thing that we don't factor in is the depreciation of the fields as well.
Capital.
Which, yeah, and we figured it's somewhere between $800 and $1,000 per field just in depreciation. So when that gets put into play, we're probably losing a little bit of money, but we actually have an end product in the end. That field is still there, but the maintenance and stuff, that stuff, the maintenance, the uniforms, the umpires, by the time we're done, we make a small profit off of our program right now.
And that does not include my time involved, Kim's time involved, where community ed does essentially bill some of that towards their costs. Their administrative specialists who are doing the registrations, setting up the schedules, things like that. They pay Joe Polkamp to run the program. You know, things like those costs are added in where our line item, that stuff goes to our administrative budget, administration budget.
So it's still there, it's just, it's not showing up.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's financial implications that are obviously a big part of this. And for instance, other communities, Tony was talking to someone I know, Bemidji, for instance, their park department doesn't even own their fields. Their baseball association owns their fields. Sauk Rapids, I believe, gave their fields, their complex, to the baseball association to run. Now, I don't know if they lease it.
No, Sauk Rapids basically gave them a chunk of land and said, build your field, our hands are clear of it.
And they did all the fundraising and whatnot for it, but, so it's, you know, the unfortunate thing is there's this community, which end up being the same community, and,
I think too,
How do we
Troy,
get there?
if I may, part of the equation in this too is the travel baseball, which our department has nothing to do with travel baseball. Same with community ed. Those are two separate associations, the Baxter Association and the Brainerd Association. And there's a potential idea of a marriage between the two of them, make that one association.
yes. And that's, for instance, in other communities, that's how their parks recoup some of the costs, is their travel associations pay a set annual fee for field maintenance. So completely separate of, for instance, if this were to happen, a community ed program. So some of that's recouped just strictly through the baseball through the Travel Ball Association. They're completely separate. There's different legal issues with travel baseball than there is with rec baseball, simply because they travel. There's insurances that has to take place, and so that's separate. And that's the other part of this pie, is that the association is hoping that they run travel baseball for both communities. And that if this works, this marriage works, that community ed would run the baseball program. The other part of that is, I think, looking at where the Parks baseball program has gone over the years, and I think we talked about that before, we don't know if that's recoupable. We don't know that it's ever going to come back. And so do we keep chasing that, or do we try to do something different and bring it all together?
Makes it tough to bring it all together when the powers that be don't all get together.
Yes.
Well, and they have no reason to. They have no, like you said, they have no reason to
Right.
have us. And for us, the question becomes too, what's the benefit for us? The benefit for us is whether or not the money equals what the value is to the citizens. So with the kids, is that putting them in that program, is that equal to the value that it's going to cost us to spend on doing that? Because we're not going to get into it for free. And the problem I have with the numbers that I've shown here is it's a sliding scale. And it isn't a scale that has a very solid foundation either, because it's, well, so we pay for what? The kids that we send over there? Well, then what happens next year? What happens the year after that? How do we figure out what's our cost going forward, as well as what's our cost this year? Because if it's just the kids that are signing up equal or extra from last year, that's very tangible. You can figure that out. But in 4 or 5 years, how do you figure that out?
Yeah, and we did talk about that at our last meeting, is, they picked a number, okay, if it's 120 kids. Well, we didn't have 120 kids in the park program last year. It was more like 90. And it was $43 per kid is what Corey kind of factored it out. So we figured it was somewhere around $4,000. But then it started to get into discussion of, well, kids that are in the Brainerd city limits versus kids that are outside the city limits, both for Baxter, Brainerd, who's coming from Nisswa, Cross Lake. So then there was some discussion, well, maybe if we want to make it right, we just split it down the middle. Baxter pays this amount, Brainerd pays this amount. So we didn't even get that far, other than to say, there's some figures that have to be worked out. But I guess when you look at it as far as the fairness, yeah, maybe that's fair, but depending on who's coming from where.
And you could have a Brainerd address and live by Gull Lake or Garrison. So you can't really use the address because that's not citizens that live within the city limits.
I've never done any administrative stuff with baseball or organization. How big of a circle can you go in? I mean, is it for statewide? Is there a rule that you can only be, 30 minutes or 30 miles from a certain area or something? Or?
It's more of a, not necessarily a school district, but a program. So for instance, for travel baseball, if you're going to be on this community's travel baseball program, you have to be registered in that community's rec program. So if you played for Aiken's rec ball or Sauk Rapids rec ball, whatever it might be, you can't play in a Brainerd travel ball team.
Have you guys had talks with Baxter about what would happen? So let's say, separate the two issues and put traveling on a different shelf than the rec program. If they decide to have you guys take over their traveling program, but yet, because this year is going to be tough. It would be really tough for us to switch our stuff this year, just financially wise. Because one, you've already put in your budget. Two, you pay a youth sports specialist. You pay Tony as well. But you also just the logistics of it might be tough this year. Is there a way for you guys to take over the program and still have the Brainerd kids be able to participate in that or not?
I don't know. We have to meet with them yet. And that would also be a marriage. Also, I don't know that it would be us necessarily just taking over. I think it would be, it might be a combination of, and then where it falls in with the name or whatever that might be, but, not sure. Not sure. One of our members has their contact information and is going to work on us meeting with them about strictly the travel part of it.
When do you have to have your flyers out or your booklet out? Because I know the Community Eds is already out
Mine, I normally get to the printers by the end of February.
February. See, that's the problem, is the timeframe is very quick.
Yeah, it's a small window. We
'Cause,
got.
like I said, Community Ed's winter program already came out, and that lists baseball
It did,
for
yeah.
spring already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it happening this year, but I like the idea. If we're gonna move forward, we need to start now and look at 2021 as target year, but we need to get answers before we can move forward.
Yeah.
And there again, I mean, with all of our charters, it just seems like we're, with the Brainerd community is dealing with 1945 technology. All the other cities seem to be dealing with current technology. And we're still going with the charter, we have to stick with this, we have to stick with this. Change it. Let's get into different things where we can do things on our own.
Well, and I think that's what's gonna be the key to making this work, is that it's gotta be, we're gonna have to think outside of the box, and we're gonna have to do things completely different than what has been in the past. What is it, Jim Thoreen, the interim administrator? You know, he made that comment at our last meeting, and I agree with him. Kids don't care, kids wanna play baseball, they don't care who's paying for it. Obviously, other people care who pays for it, but what do we have to do differently to make it? And you're right, Baxter, they don't have to do anything. They have their program, but they're willing to, and they want to, for the same reason, is that they see the benefit in bringing this together at an earlier age versus when these kids are in school in 8th grade. So, you know, I think they want to do it as, for the right reason. Do they have to? No. They don't.
Do we know that, though? Because have we heard from Baxter themselves who's paying for it? Because Community Ed,
We haven't heard from Baxter.
we haven't heard from Baxter. We've heard from Community Ed. Community Ed would love
We were
it.
hoping they would, Daryl Olson was supposed to be at this last meeting, but for some reason couldn't come. So that's part of the reason we don't have more information moving forward, but
And I was hoping to hear back from the city administrator too today, just to get a feel from him. But I think if I was able to set up a meeting with all the various parties, I think we're gonna have a lot more answers.
you know,
And it doesn't hurt to talk.
because we don't know if they're okay with the current agreement at this point. And it would be nice to know that.
So we're twiddling our thumbs until we find out for sure what they want to do? Is there, I mean, other than, I mean, really, is there anything we can do today that would benefit any of this?
I don't think there's a lot that,
Well, if you
We can't
guys-
do anything in 2020 anyways, right? Is
it's,
that right?
I don't know how quick it could happen. I mean, we're in January right now, so I don't know. What maybe can happen is maybe this baseball association meets with their people and tries to, pull that together and start to merge that. I don't know if that's possible or not. We still have to meet with them on that, but I think eventually it has to start somewhere, because to continue down the road we're going down, I don't think there's gonna be a Brainerd baseball program anyway. I just, from what I've watched over the years, I'm not just into this, I've been involved with this for 23 years, and from what I've seen, to turn this around is, can be really difficult, and
We do need to be careful though, because if you send out that message to the public that you think it's gonna go away, it will go away. You won't even have a choice in the matter, because if people believe that you're not gonna continue to have something, well then why get invested in it to begin with? So we need to be careful with that, is we need to make sure that we understand what our decision's gonna be before we start sending out that type of message. Which this is a public meeting, which is broadcast on the internet, and people will gravitate to it eventually at some point, so we need to be careful with that. We need to tread lightly in understanding that we have a program and that will need to continue until it does not continue. Well, my kid plays baseball, you know that.
what?
My kid plays baseball, you know that. I feel the same way that you do, that something has to
So have
give.
all of my kids play baseball.
Yeah,
And
something has to
I'm,
give.
I'm trying to be proactive in saying, you know, it's,
Yeah,
something else needs to happen, because what we have isn't what this community should have. And the reason I can say that is because I've been in all other communities around this state, and we're not anywhere close to where we should be. And so that's why I'm passionate about this. But we have to do exactly what you brought up at the beginning of the meeting, Dale. We have to get more hands on deck.
To me, that's the next step, and it's something we really can't do today. Because we'd be beating our heads against the wall until we have some
Yep.
answers.
Yep.
And, you know, if we get community ed and Baxter say, oh, we want it the way it is, then we have to come up with some other solution if we want to continue the program. It won't be as is, but be something.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. So we'll continue down that road. Does anyone have any, I don't know that we need to vote on it. I mean, we've kind of already voted on this before, and unfortunately, we didn't get as far in our last meeting as we were hoping to.
But I think the important thing is to make sure that you have all of the required participants available for that specific day, and then, you know, move on. Just make sure you get some
I-
answers.
I agree, and I expressed that to Tony yesterday when we met, that we need to have a school district, and he agreed, and I think that's where we have to go with it.
I've been hearing up here a lot that the Baxter people are sort of in with it. Do you guys get the same general consensus that you guys are involved with trying to put things together? Or is that just hearsay up here on the board?
No, I mean, it's a concern that they're viewing as well. They want a unified association specifically for sure for travel. You guys talked about the value of your programs with the kids. I don't know what value you can give those kids if they're not getting the correct coaching, which that's where it all starts. It starts with coaching, and I've seen, you know, younger kids trying to coach these teams in Brainerd where Baxter's got adults that know the game, understand it, and are teaching these kids very well from the get-go. That's a huge value. So there's no one to blame, it's how it is,
Right.
it's how it's been. And so, kind of went off on a tangent there, but the value there is huge with anything. A music teacher, any type of sport at the youth level is huge that way. And when I see my 10-year-old cousin's team from Baxter come over and absolutely obliterate Brainerd, they've got 2 young kids coaching the team, and the kids barely know where to go on the field. So it's certainly, from that standpoint, frustrating. But to your question before, yeah, I think they want to see unity. At the end of the day, we're Brainerd Warriors,
Right.
not Brainerd Baxter, not Baxter
good.
One thing that stands out too is when the Brainerd Baseball Association was in the homecoming parade last year, and these guys are handing out flyers and stuff. How many times did people come up and say, when are you guys going to join? Become one?
Yeah, we heard it consistently
Yeah.
throughout the whole parade. When are you guys gonna bring this together? And they were talking both communities. Is their program perfect? I would say no. But, you know, you're not even looking at this, what can we do to give the youth that want to play baseball the best opportunity to be coached well, to be successful, to learn sportsmanship and grow in the community with those characteristics. But
I would like to say one thing about this conversation, though. Just, I think we all have to remember that kids play sports for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of the dialogue here I'm hearing is based around the competitive nature of progressing with baseball, and I totally get that. But I think also that there are kids who play city ball because they don't want to play the highly competitive, highly coached. I mean, I see this between specifically slow pitch softball versus fast pitch. I mean, the girls that play slow pitch, in my opinion, they want a completely different experience than the fast pitch experience that they offer on the highly competitive, highly coached travel side. So I don't want us to just, at least my thinking is I think we need to remember that kids play baseball for a lot of different reasons, and what we may offer as a lower intensity may be right for some people, some parents, some people. I don't know that. I can't speak to baseball. Obviously, I don't have nearly the background in this that you guys do, but I can say that I've been highly involved with the slow pitch side for quite a few years, and I know that those girls don't play fast pitch, a lot of them, because of that exact different experience that they're after, and the families and the parents and that kind of thing. So I just want to throw that out there, and I don't know that is going to land on anybody or if that is something we should be considering, but maybe we have players that are signing up in Brainerd specifically because they don't want a different type of experience. I'm just throwing that out. But
you're not wrong.
Okay.
There's kids and parents that just want to play, whether it's baseball but because they want to go do it, and they don't necessarily care about the higher level. But you have that in every community.
Right.
I mean, every community has a rec program or a community ed program and has a higher competitive travel program. And so, but when I hear Zach say, I watched my 10-year-old cousin play against a team from Baxter, same type of program, and it's nowhere near competitive, then that's a concern too. And I don't have all the answers, and that's what I'm saying. We got to think out of the box, because I'm not saying that's the wrong idea either, but something else has to be.
Because one side of me is saying, okay, just let the kids who want the more competitive nature just naturally drift over towards the more competitive side, and let the kids who just want to get together a couple nights a week and bang a ball around, just let them play in a less competitive league. I don't know that, but Dave?
Well, and that might be part of our issue too, is that we have done a disservice to the kids that have signed up for baseball in our area. And my son was extremely frustrated. His trophy this year, he got his trophy and he said, "It doesn't mean anything, Dad. We got second place. We didn't win a game, but we got second place." And the way he looked at me when he got the trophy was very dejected. Right. And he's never been that way with any sport. Loves baseball too. It's his favorite sport. And that was very heartbreaking as a father to watch that happen. We are doing a disservice to the kids. We have to figure out what we're going to do. And if that's switching over to a different program, or if that's wildly changing our own program, we have to do something. And my only fear is that we're going to push ourselves right out the door, and we're going to go down a road that it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we need to be careful with that, because there are still kids that if we end up having a baseball program this year, that will still be playing baseball in Brainerd, and I don't want them to go through that. So even if it is just one more year that we're doing it, we need to make sure that we're doing it appropriately and that those kids are getting something out of it. I think that's the biggest problem, is that we're not getting them enough of the coaching, like you said, enough of the skill set that they need, and then they're getting frustrated. We had one kid on one of the teams say he got yelled at for doing something. He had no idea what he did. He's told his parents, and they told me that my kid says I'm getting yelled at, but I have no idea what I did wrong. And well, what's the point? That kid's not going to play baseball again. And at that point, we've not only just taken their money, but we've actually sent them down a path that is negative as opposed to positive. So we, as a park group, need to make sure that whatever it is we end up doing, it needs to be better. It has to. And I know that's where you're coming from. And I do agree that at some point there needs to be a solution to everything. I just don't want to, because my kid's probably going to play in Brainerd again if we have a Brainerd league. I'm a liaison to the park board. It'd be weird for my kid to go play in Baxter. But I don't want my kid to have to feel like that next year. I want him to get done with his year and say, I'm glad that went better than last year. I'm glad that we did that, as opposed to handing me his trophy. And honestly, the look on his face was enough to make me feel like we have to figure something out. You have to.
So in our minds, it's basically fix our coaching on our Brainerd side, or create a better experience option. I'm boiling this down in two simple things, but fix the experience on the Brainerd side, or basically find a way to, so to speak, wave the white flag and just transfer our program over into a bigger, more well-established program. Is that right?
The one sad thing that I'd like to mention is you could just get rid of your baseball program. That's the only issue I have when I look at these numbers is you could just get rid of your baseball program and the kids could go play in Baxter, and then you're not paying anything for those kids to go there. It's a little weird to me that we would pay to send our kids over there when we don't have to be in the business of baseball.
Right.
That's what I'm worried
That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah, that is a little weird that, us having a program or us not having a program, there's a different philosophy in Baxter than there is here, in that they're paying just for that to exist and then someone else is running it. We've been paying to have our own operation running, and we're almost going to end up double dipping. And that's why I'm worried about this year, in that you've already set your budget, you already have people in place that are doing these jobs, and then you're going to pay someone else to do the jobs as well. Especially when we broke even last year. It's a weird spot to be in, especially if we don't know what Baxter's commitment is. Again, they may not even want to be involved with it anyways. We haven't heard a lot from them.
Well, they're not highly incentivized.
We have not heard anything from
what I'm
them.
gathering
That's-
here, right?
That makes me really nervous, is that we've been trying to talk about this for 6 months?
We haven't heard from the city.
From the city, which is a big player in it.
We've heard from their community ed program, but we haven't heard from
Yeah.
their city.
Yep.
And so I guess when you look at that, they're paying this money because they want to have a program. They're just not running it. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Which is a different philosophy.
Which is a different philosophy, but is it any different than we pay people to run the rinks in the wintertime so kids and families can go skate at the loss of $10,000, $12,000 a year? We're supplying a service.
Yep.
Right? So, in reality, same mindset, we're providing the community a service. But I'm not saying that has to be that way, I'm just saying, isn't that what parks do?
Yeah.
Provide services for their community members? So I think it's a mindset of how are we going to do this?
Isn't the question that we're really talking about is, can we right our own ship? Because I only see two options here, right? Either we focus on our own baseball program and try to fix it, or we just say, we're going to let this happen at Baxter. The kids are going to get there organically one way or another, whether we stop the program or let it, so to speak, die on the vine. The question is, if we don't think we can fix our baseball program this year, why wait another year? Let's just let these kids go play.
I think part of it is their program perfect? No. Do we still have a chance to have a say in how that program is run to make it fair for people in Brainerd, Baxter, and in the outlying areas? So, I'm not saying they have a perfect program. And we kind of talked about this before, is do we try to make this transition while we still have a say in it? The travel ball, if we can make that work, we can have a say in it. If we get the varsity coaches, the Legion, the VFW coaches involved, and it's all one group, part of a monthly meeting, to say this is how this program's gonna be run, then this community is for the better for that.
Understand, thank you.
And in reference to your comment, I don't think it is necessarily either or. You can see that Tony and staff have put together some different scenarios where there's a possibility of combining things together and coming up with something different, so.
I see.
But we can't look at those scenarios until we get some answers.
So I think moving forward, we could try to have another meeting prior to our regular scheduled meeting on the 21st.
It'd be great if it were to work out, but
see what
if
we
we can't
can-
do it until
See what we can find
February,
out.
it's still a necessity.
Yeah.
Because you have to have all the players there, or else people are spinning their wheels.
It's almost to a point where we almost have to show up as an uninvited guest at some sort of meeting they're already having, if they're not responding within 6 months of already being requested.
Yeah,
The
and, you know,
the joint powers, they only meet twice a year.
Right.
But I could try to pull together all the people and get a meeting and try to set it up for like next week or something and go that route. Just feel them out.
And part of what they're waiting, they want to see what our response was from this park board meeting too. So, I mean, if we come back to them and say, hey, we met, you know, we're under the instruction to, we need more people involved, then they may be more apt to come to the table. So, all we can do is try.
Right?
Okay, and really nothing else to accomplish today, is there?
Unless someone else has anything else they would like to talk about.
Just that Dalo was approved last night to re-up for another 5 years, so.
Boy, Dale.
Should we say congratulations or ha-ha?
No comment.
Right.
No.
Okay.
And then at our next meeting, we'll have to vote on president, vice president.
Correct.
All right. Do you guys have anything else that you'd want to say? Okay. All right.
Thanks for coming to our.
Yeah, thanks for coming,
meaningless
gentlemen.
meeting.
Well, and I did talk to Tony even earlier today about, are we having you guys come to something that, you know, is this going to be a fruitless meeting? And we thought, well, maybe if nothing else, we can share the information that we've come up with and
Plus, you guys
keep
gonna
moving
get some
forward.
feedback of whether
Yeah.
we should move forward or just forget it. I think you should move forward
Okay.
and
Do
go
we have
from there.
a motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.